there's an amazing amount of footwork in this philosophical stance, which is, as Mipam says, is what is being meditated. So that one can attain the fruit state of enlightenment, of Buddhahood. It's easy enough to say that there is primordial enlightenment, primordial Buddhahood, that we're all primordially Buddhas, and it's easy enough to say that through the process of practice, we, even on the appearance level, become, it is said, or we go through practices in dependence on which it can be said we become Buddhified. Easy enough to say. But the detail to be able to repeat from without just opening up the book and reading it out loud, from memory, the basic points without getting confused is rather difficult. I'm still, I mean, there seem to be plenty of statements that well, first of all, I just said starping because I come from at least certain areas of New England, so I had to put an R in the word stop and say starp. I'm stopping in mid-sentence to make a refinement, to make it easier, really, that all of the attributes of Buddhahood are present in the basis. In another way you can say all of the phenomena, same word, of Buddhahood are present in the basis. I mean, otherwise, there's no way you can say that we're primordially Buddhified, primordially enlightened. And there are plenty of statements this way. And they're, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to say that all phenomena, does it say this? Cyclic existence, which would be cyclic existence and nirvana. But it says, I don't know if it says that, but it says all phenomena exist in pure form in the basis. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. So, does that mean cyclic existence, as you're saying, afflictions, or even things like snot? exists in pure form in the basis. This comes up in Jonang because snot is runny and yet everything is vajric, hard, in the basis. There are various ways of dealing with the issues that one wants to bring up, either on the most extreme silly or on the least extreme, but still actually silly. So, the ins and outs of the assertions, how they're handled, are it'll be necessary to read this first section. It's necessary for me still to reread it over and over to see how this issue is handled. I think this paragraph that begins with "consequently" is quite clear. None of these issues are brought up. And it talks about the way things are in the basis, and by the end of the paragraph is talking about how things are in very pure Buddhahood are in full agreement. And Khetsun Sangpo steps in and points out how in the final mode of perception in Buddhahood, there's this concordance in how things actually are and how they appear. Gelug wants to claim, I'm speaking from a Nyingma point of view that's sort of pejoratively putting in wants to claim. Gelug does claim that things actually are sick, impure, and disgusting in cyclic existence. They are validly established as sufferings and so forth. Whereas in Dzogchen, whether one is speaking about the path of method or the path of release within Dzogchen, things actually are not validly established as sick and disgusting, in our type of world. They actually are pure. And it's just a mode of appearance that makes them look like us to be, when we are not totally deceived, that they are sick and disgusting. To put it bluntly, even our type of happiness is actually sick and disgusting. It's suffering. Which, to pretend that suffering isn't sick and disgusting is foolish.
But Jeffrey, I've heard also in our tradition, people say that when you have a yogi here, the yogi doesn't see these things the way we do. The yogi sees a pure land.
Correct.
And, so then that would seem like in Gelug, they aren't saying that things are validly established as sick and disgusting.
They-
They're saying it depends on your perspective.
Well, you might think that, but valid establishment. It is said that if we take things from the viewpoint of yogis, then all of ordinary perception, I'm trying to cause the actual Tibetan to appear to my mind, but it's not quite appearing, falls to pieces. So in our presentation of the world as it's ordinarily perceived, we do not take account of how things appear to yogis. We do not take account of that. So that's like, what? You know, from one point of view, my reaction is, what? Aren't we trying to see things as yogis see them? And you have to answer, yes, we are. But if we do, then all of the layout, the presentation of the ordinary world totally falls apart. And there's no way you can lay it out. And to be able to lay it out, you need valid establishment. Therefore, the confines of valid establishment, there's a confine of it. And Giant Shape is very good about putting a confine on the scope of valid establishment. Thus, when he gets to the presentation of the fruit, he, in the consequence school, he goes particularly strongly into the unusual modes of Buddhahood. And as Khetsun Lekden used to say, he does this because so many ignore it. That, for instance, we could call it in English the relativity of time. That aeons upon aeons can be put into a single moment. And it's very important in Maps of the Profound to read that section on the fruit state. And so in Maps, I put a lot of attention into presenting the fruit state as it is in Giant Sheba's text, which smashes the usual mode of perception that, there's moment, and there's nothing you can do about that. So time and space become extremely flexible. And as I said to Khetsun Lekden, well, then the Vietnam War. So I didn't say it shouting at him, but in my own mind I was shouting at him. I said, well then, a Buddha could get rid of the Vietnam War like that. And he said yes. Then I was thinking, cruel Buddha. Yeah. Yeah. Shrink aeons into a single moment. But you see, this is in a lot of sutras and so forth, which are then seemingly ignored by the presentation of valid establishment. But once you realize the confines of valid establishment, then they're not ignored.
Could you explain that?
Oh no, we're supposed to leave it at that. So you see that what's coming out here, again, is the difference between the basic conceptual orientations of the two systems. That Gelug takes a basic orientation from the ordinary state. Gelug basic orientation from the fruit state. But then Gelug can't lose the fruit state entirely. So how is it going to bring it back? It's going to have to put a confine on the scope of the valid establishment that is known in the basic state, in the basal state. That means the state of the ordinary state. The ordinary state can only work if there's some valid establishment. Otherwise, you can't even have reasoning. Otherwise, you can't have an approach to emptiness. Otherwise, you can't teach first what exists. As Aryadeva says, first you teach what exists. Then you can teach about emptiness. You have to have a path toward emptiness. So, with their respective basic orientations, they then have to rescue what they lost by having that basic orientation. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a full system. In Nyingma, how do they end up as not being nihilistic? And I'll try to, things are not appearing, how does the teacher keep the student from thinking that things just plain don't exist? As it said in Nyingma, Meba Selna, the non-existent clearly appears. The clear appearance of the non-existent. So then why should you care, really, about other sentient beings? And I'm not just going to make up something off the top of my head. Is it through the personal appeal of the guru? Is it, one of my friends makes a big deal out of the fact that compassion, we have Ngo, Rangshin, Tuje. Entity, Ngo, Gata. The entity is pure from the letter Ga. Rangshin, Hlundru. I mean, this is the nature of basic reality. The Rangshin, the nature is spontaneous, it's effulgent. And Tuje Gunkyap, compassion is all pervasive. And I've been calling your attention to where compassion appears and what does all pervasive mean. And one of my friends makes a big deal out of it, that here compassion is in the basic warp and woof of reality. Well, that's nice, but what does the text say? I think that's great, it's really nice. Compassion is basic, it's in the basic warp and woof of reality, and we who have been taught a great deal about compassion and have practiced a lot about compassion can read a lot into that. Okay, that's nice, and I think it's nice for us to do that. But what does the text say? When the text talks about it, it says, you can do a search on the word compassion. Khetsun Sangpo says at one point, compassion pervades cyclic existence and nirvana. Do a search on it. It doesn't say a lot.
But doesn't it say that the basis possesses all good qualities? So then it should possess also compassion.
Oh yeah, and it does say that. I mean, this itself says it. Ngo Ranshin Tuje. Entity, nature, and compassion. And then what does compassion mean? Compassion, it connects with emanation bodies. And then it doesn't say anything else. And we can do something with that. You know, we can, of course, compassion connects with them and emanation bodies. Compassion would be the very reason, but does it say compassion is the very reason for the emanation bodies? Emanation bodies their very structure is compassion. They're there to help, and therefore, blah, 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 blah. And where's the blah, blah, blah? But maybe that's not what this text is about. And then it hits you with compassion. Does it say pervade cyclic existence? What? Compassion generates cyclic existence? Emanates cyclic existence the same way it emanates emanation bodies? No, it can't mean that. I'm playing, you see. And I'm looking for more. Now, if you read the poem, not His Holiness's commentary in the poem, because we know His Holiness will go to town on compassion, but read the poem. There's more in the poem, in that book, The Heart of Meditation. Anyway, I'm just raising it. there's something, and I'm not finding fault. I want to find out what compassion means. There's something very deep here that I bet that because it's like some sort of spirit. I was speculating, you see, that'll push, that there's a push in the midst of cyclic existence that pushes toward caring about others. But I'd like to see some sort of statement of that, you see. Anyway, much as emptiness, you see. When you look at the nature of phenomena, there's a push toward not taking things as they appear. Delineation that these bases just means substrata, that is phenomena, okay, these phenomena appearing in the manner of impure cyclic existence, okay, are spontaneously established. And it did say spontaneously. I had to look at that. As entities of the fruit state. Now, what's indented is, you see, he puts a quote. You see, this is the delineation. He describes the delineation with what appears before the indented. But the quote is not a quote of somebody else's writing. The quote is what we're meditating on, what we are to delineate, what we are to practice and meditate. You see, in the next, after the Tibetan, Khetsun Sangpo says something, and then Mipam says, through practicing such by meditating. So what are we supposed to practice? The part that's indented. That's the essence of what we're practicing. Whether Buddha attributes are manifest or not. Or whether things appear as pure or impure. Okay. All phenomena of the basis, path, and fruit are Buddhified in the nature of the nature body. Okay. The one gone thus as pristine wisdom endowed with all aspects. So there's the wisdom truth body and the nature body. But the nature body, he puts in a positive with that and identifies it as the Buddha's pristine wisdom endowed with all aspects. Well, even if a Buddha has a nature body and a wisdom truth body, or, the nature, you're not going to have wisdom alone, emptiness alone. You're going to have emptiness and clear light together. So that's what's being indicated by nature body, and he's glossing it with a one going thus is pristine wisdom that is endowed with all the aspects of enlightenment. Now, if you take that sentence and put it with the rest of the sentence, is the mode of delineation. Delineation means philosophical, if we put, let's say, our word philosophical, it's figuring out, settling, getting straight, the standpoint of primordial Buddhafication through the view. And then he goes on in the next section. This is what we're to practice through meditation. And you enhance it through behavior. And thereby the person who's the meditator comes to manifestly actualize the meaning of that delineation. And he's saying that's what I've been teaching you. So you could practice it by meditation. And this is a delineation of how the basis is primordially Buddhified. And by now, we're satisfied that this is what he's been teaching us. And then I changed the word completion to finalization, because it's tarchimba, gone to the final. And the completion isn't bad, but I use it for other words. And finalization right through to the Buddha ground arises. Why? Because we practiced it through meditation. And when, through the view, the final meaning of delineating the basis as a great equality of purity is manifestly actualized, then we can say you're Buddhified. You can say that. He uses the word say because you are already Buddhified. But there's this process, and then we say you're Buddhified. And he nicely tells us in what sense, with respect to the mode of appearance. In terms of the basis, you are already Buddhified, but now in terms of the appearance, which previously was all messed up, you're now Buddhified also with respect to the mode of appearance. And this is, once you take it from that indented paragraph, this is nice and clear. I mean, the words. And Khetsun Sangpo repeats, not only in terms of the mode of abiding, which in Hopkins terms, mode of subsistence, but mode of abiding is the same thing. But in the mode of appearance, now you're Buddhified. This is clear too. It being the case that what is primordially Buddhified can't be made into being Buddhified presently by means of the path, clear again. You're already Buddhified in terms of the basis, so you really can't be made into being Buddhified just because, but through your hard effort at the path. Rather, what's going on is that you're completing And the word is complete here, you see. Dzog, like Dzogchen, great completeness. But here you're completing familiarization with that basis in accordance with what has been determined by way of the view. That's why the view is so important. Then Khetsun Sangpo made clear what we need to add in here. The final meaning of delineating the basis as a great equality of purity is manifestly actualized. It's brought into appearance. And for this, the convention of becoming Buddhified is used. You see, Mipam is talking to his students, which is really nice, and therefore we get a repetition of what he's already said. Much like my great teacher repeated so many things, sometimes in the same way, but many times in a slightly different way. And because this is the context of the writing of this book by his student, his student is taking notes, I suppose, while he's teaching, but also his mind is such that he could go back to his room and write down a whole lot of stuff too. And this is really the end of the section, and now he's going to talk about the two types of Buddhafication, which are complex in themselves. One is about the original protector, Khetsun Sangpo, becoming Buddhified, and the other is the rest of us becoming Buddhified. So this section is done, and frankly, I could insert in here a heading, two types of Buddhification. We could even say two types of second Buddhification. But anyway, two types of Buddhification would be enough. Now, if we go back to this lead-in before that indented paragraph, and you see the words from the indented paragraph on down are, I don't want to exaggerate it, but are clear, or pretty clear. The words before it, we can zero in on just what isn't clear now that we see all this clarity. Delineation that these phenomena appearing in the manner of impure cyclic existence, well, that's clear. That means he's talking about people like us and animals and any type of non-Buddhified are. Now I've tried to think, well, what is spontaneously established? Are in and of themselves, they aren't established by valid cognition as impure. They are themselves established as entities of the fruit state. Why say as entities of the fruit state? Why not say as entities of the basal state? Well, why even state? Tribatan chebe semkitengi tombani. John Shiva says that the Buddha nature is the emptiness in the mind, the emptiness of the mind of the emptiness of a mind that is together with obstructions. The emptiness of a mind that has obstructions. And something's, like a chipmunk tapping at my mind that's saying, there's a debate. I'm sure there's several debates. Like, does a Buddha have a Buddha nature? Buddha matrix. I ended up translating Buddha nature as Buddha matrix, and unfortunately, I don't know if I wrote down why I ended up translating Buddha nature as, it's Buddha essence. Buddha essence as, if you take Nyingma, Tathagata essence. All right, see you around. Goodbye.